welcome to the Collaboration Conversation, a new-ish video podcast where Christian artists, entrepreneurs, and friends of ours can share about their upcoming projects and how they are using the gifts and talents that God has given them. We are stoked to share with you guys that season 1 of the Collaboration Conversation has had over 11,000 views across all of our platforms, and so we are so grateful to our listeners. Thank you guys so much. This podcast is part of the Project Brickworks crowdfunded ministry, but we are so excited to announce today that we are now accepting sponsors for this season and next season of the Collaboration Conversation. We have varying sponsorship levels, and so to get started, head over to thecollaborationconversation.org and click Sponsor an Episode. Today, our special guest is David Hampton. David is an author, podcast host, musician, and certified professional recovery coach. His podcast, Positive Sobriety, was recently listed by FeedSpot as a top 30 podcast on sobriety to listen to in 2021. Congratulations, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be with you both.
It is so good to see you.
It is good to see you too.
Sarah was asking when we were going over the list of guests this week, and she said, "Do you know him?" I'm like, "Do I know him?"
Okay, yes. I have to preface that by saying that I would say a higher majority of the guests are people that she knows versus people that I know or bring to the table. Yeah. And so just every week, I'm like, all right, how do you... Do you know them?
Right.
How do you know them? So in my defense, I don't just say, how do you know them?
No, and that's true. But it's just funny because, we haven't seen each other in years, but we were such good friends. I mean, back in the day. And we worked together at a church. In fact, I left and went and got another job because I was kind of unhappy.
I can't imagine why.
Kind of unhappy.
But you and Trisha brought me back. Do you remember?
I do. Yeah, we were kind of partners in crime. And,
yes, it was awesome.
I needed your support.
Yeah. No, I remember those days fondly. You and Cindy. Oh my goodness! Just it was way fun to interact with you guys all the time. So
yeah.
So from that perspective, yes, we go way back.
Way back.
Yeah. Well, and you have an interaction with David that you won't remember at all, I don't think.
Well, okay.
But you were like 8.
Definitely won't remember it.
His daughter, Lauren, was selling a small suitcase of Barbies. And
I do remember, well, I don't remember that it was specifically his daughter, but I remember receiving the suitcase full of Barbies.
You had saved up some money and bought them from her. It was
funny.
So cute.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Tell her I said thank you.
Well, I will. Yeah. I'll tell you what, she had more Barbies than she had room to mess with. So,
so you were relieved.
Have a thinning out.
Yes. You were relieved to pass them off.
Yes.
Well, we're so happy to have you here. I'm glad you guys go way back, but we actually probably do go way back. I just was a small tot. So if you wouldn't mind, share with me and with our listeners just a little bit about you.
Sure. I am a musician in a kind of former life now. I came to Nashville in 1987. Yeah, it's October of 87. And I was a songwriter and a musician, played keyboard and piano. And I played for Christian artists, had a couple of writing deals with some major Christian publishers. And had some good things happen in that season of my life. And then, I traveled for about 5 years, and that was enough. You see airports and hotel rooms and the venue where you're playing, and then you see the next city's hotels and
rinse and repeat
venues and airports. And so it's just it's fun, but it's enough is enough for me. And Christ Community at the time had an opening for a what they were calling a director of worship arts ministries. And so that was sort of a great way for my world to get married, and arranging and writing and working with really super talented people. I had a ridiculous talent pool of people to pull from. I mean,
yes, you did.
If you could screw that job up, you did deserve it. I mean, it was just, those folks just carried it so much. And so that was a great stretch. And I stayed in that job for about 20 years.
Yeah.
And I left in around 2016, 2017, and I had worked on a certification for recovery work, addiction recovery. The irony in my story is that while working at a church, I developed a really serious drinking problem. And so,
oh, wow.
You're kind of around 2005 is when I got sober. But I also, when you get sober, you really have to rethink everything about what you thought you knew about yourself and the world and God and the life you have and all that stuff. And I began to realize I enjoyed working with recovering people a lot. And I felt connected to them because I resonated so much with all the kind of the conflict that gets us there, And so, I was married. My wife passed away in 2013 of complications from primary progressive MS. And so that in a way was, I want to say this in a right way, but that was a freeing thing for me because it gave me options that I didn't have before. When I was working at the church, it was great. They had great benefits and she needed those. And I did too for her care. And she was in a hospital bed about the last 7 years of her life at home. And I was her primary caregiver.
Oh, gosh.
And, prior to that, hence the drinking problem.
Right.
And so that was a pretty rocky several years when I was at my worst and she was getting worse. And so when I got sober, I really started rethinking a lot of what I knew or thought I knew about God and life and faith and myself and recovery. And so all that just to say, when I launched into this new space at, at 55, when you decide you want a new career in your life and maybe going into something self-employed would be a great idea. It was scary.
Yes.
So, but anyway, it's been great. I felt very fortunate and blessed by a lot of people who have really kind of taken me in, and I'm in a great group of therapists in Brentwood that have referred to me a lot. And so my practice is pretty healthy and I get to do a lot of different things because I kind of get bored at times with any one thing. So I've got a lot of diverse things that I'm a part of now. And so it's fun. The work is hard and the stories are sad. And then there are stories that are really great because you see people make really huge turns in their lives that need to happen.
Wow.
So
yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. Not all doom and gloom, but it's a very interesting day every day. So
for sure. Bet. Well, as a perpetual freelancer, I commend you for taking that leap because it's just a different lifestyle that, a lot of people can't understand. And you were talking about being bored if you do the same thing over. I'm like, yep, sure do. I've been freelancing for a while, so I resonate with you on that. But then also a little off script here. I just wanted to say thank you for kind of dedicating your time to others. I currently am personally going through recovery for an eating disorder, which is different. But I'm still in recovery and I have a recovery team that I work with. And so I just am so blessed by people like that who are putting their talents and their gifts and their compassion towards others and helping them through whatever it is they're going through. So just from a personal standpoint, I just wanted to say thank you for
thank you for saying that too. And congratulations to you for embarking on doing what you need to do to be healthy too.
And
that's a big deal.
And you're right. It just changes your perspective on, for me, it's food. Just what I have known for 30 years about food is just drastically different from what I'm trying to relearn and reprogram. And so it's just a huge, and how God plays into that, how my faith plays into that. And so it's just, it's been a road. It's been a journey. I'm only about 6 months in, so it's an early journey. But anyway, just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that very much.
Well, when I think of you, and you describe and telling us a little bit about yourself, I do think of you as a dad, a very proud dad, and grandpa.
Yes, I am. My daughter is she's the joy, in my life, and one of a few. But she is the mother of two beautiful little boys, and Patrick and Jackson. And Patrick is going to be 3 in September. Jackson turned 1 in May. And so she's got these boys about 18 months apart.
She's got her hands full, is what I was going to say.
Yeah. And it's just, it is a handful, and it's fun and it's great. And I go over and I bring them a cookie and I play with them and we have a big time, and then I leave. Yes. Which is really wonderful.
Well, I haven't seen Lauren in a few years, but what I remember about her is she was kind of just this amazing mix of you and your wife.
Yeah.
She, I don't know. She
is. Yeah.
She's pretty special.
She's got a lot of her mom's coloring and features, and then she's got some of mine, I think. And but her nature is so funny because she's always been such a, I always thought she was sort of like me in a sort of artsy way, that she was, free as the breeze in the trees and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And as a mom and a person that's working, she's a realtor and she's working in real estate and property management and things. And, she has turned into her mother, the list
like
maker.
Trisha?
I went over to help with the boys one day, and she said, "Okay, here's a list on the cabinet of everything that has to happen, and here's when they take this, and here's when they do that, and here's when they nap, and this is what they're going to have, and it's all laid out here for you. You don't have to think about anything; you just have to put it together and do it." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, you turned into your mom." It's just it's like having a conversation from back with Trisha. I thought, "Oh my gosh, she's come into."
That's so funny.
Yeah. Well, I can just tell because, we're on Facebook and she'll post some stuff because she and I are friends too, but just those little guys are so adorable. And I know you're a big part of their life. So that's awesome.
Well, thank you. I am very biased about it, but they are cuties and they're fun and they're smart and, they're just smart enough to be tricky, so it's starting to emerge that this is not going to be an easy trip.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's jump in and tell us first, I guess, about your podcast. You're probably our first podcaster.
You're our first podcaster on our podcast.
Yes. We're so excited.
Thank you. I'm honored to be in that space with you. The great thing about the podcast is Nate Larkin does it with me. He's my friend and has been for many, many years. He's one of the very instrumental people in getting me into recovery. And he is also a recovering person. He has pretty openly dealt with his sexual addiction and talks about it very openly. And like me, he was also employed in a church for a number of years while he was active in his addiction, which, as you can imagine, was a real complicated mess.
Wow,
right.
Yeah.
And so he's got a great story. And so he came to me one day. We were having coffee because we have coffee about once a week in the morning. We were just, that's kind of been our thing for a long time. And so we were talking one day and he said, "I've got this crazy idea. I want to do a podcast. I want to call it the Positive Sobriety Podcast. And I want to have people on that talk about the positive things that they're doing in their recovery, not just the drunkalogs or the terrible, stories that got so dramatic and crazy. I mean, those are important and they're part of all of our stories. Right. But he said, I want to know what people are doing now in their sobriety with recovery, with what they're experiencing. What is the positive thing that after being sober for a bit or being in recovery for a bit that you're doing with your life?" And so we've had these really amazing people. He said, I'm thinking about a co-host. And I was like, duh, I'm right
Hello, pick
me.
Oh,
so
that's funny.
Inserted myself into his idea. And we started doing it just, Rex Schnelly, our friend, who's a great musician, songwriter, but he's also a very techie guy. And Nate and I are not in any way capable of pulling it together technologically. And so Rex has been a huge help because he edits everything down. He puts the bumpers on it and the music and all of that stuff. And but we've been able to get some really, really interesting guests, authors, therapists, people who are doing everything from, there's a lady here in town who is in recovery, and she was very impacted by mindfulness and martial arts. And so she started this recovery martial arts thing. And so people go to this kind of a 12-step based martial arts class. And,
wow.
We've had her on, just people like that are just so fascinating. And then we've had people that are doing incredible work with the brain, researchers, scientists, and we've just been really fortunate. And so we've gotten some good traction and gotten linked with some good people. And so we're starting to get some good traffic, and which is interesting because we really didn't know what we were doing. We just are two guys that wanted to get on a microphone and talk to people, for an hour. And so that's been fun. It's been a really fun thing. Positive Sobriety Podcast. You can find it on, anywhere that you can pick up a podcast. So
yeah,
that is awesome. Well, I want to say a quick shout out to Rex because he was just on our podcast towards the end of season 1.
Wow.
We're in early-ish season 2 now, but he was just on just a little bit ago. So he's awesome, and he had his whole like tech system behind him. So we saw where he probably edits all your stuff, and so but that is so cool. For us, our favorite part of the podcast is the guests and like interacting with people that we don't know or that we haven't seen in a really long time. I don't want to assume that that's your favorite part, but I'll go ahead and ask, what's your favorite part of doing the podcast?
You are exactly right. It is the guests because, Nate and I have fun, talking with each other, but it is the guest because it's really all about the guest. It's about getting them to feel comfortable and share their story and what they're about and what they want people to leave knowing about them. And we're not a faith-based podcast, so we get people from every conceivable kind of faith system or value system or ideology. And, it's interesting because you don't have to agree with everything everybody says to get them, the space to tell their truth. Yeah. And, but the thing that we all do have in common is that we want people to get healthy. And we want to give people an opportunity to see every week that there's a person here who at one time was not doing so hot, life was not, working exactly as the brochure. And they made some changes and that they were capable and that this stuff really does pay off, and that's what we want them to leave knowing is that this is something that that can give people hope.
Yeah.
So,
amen. Well, so is it a weekly podcast?
Well, we do record every week, but sometimes we only post maybe every other week, and we'll have 2 or 3 new ones that'll emerge, and then we'll have a week like this week. Fortunately, our guest had to cancel at the last minute. We couldn't get a replacement, so we didn't record, but we're going to reschedule him probably in a week. We've already got another recording date set up. So, it kind of averages out to about 50 a year. And I think we've done just now a little over 100 episodes.
Oh my gosh.
So, that is so cool.
Congratulations.
Yes.
That is a huge feat. One of our favorite statistics is that we read that's like, what is it? Like 80.
Oh yeah.
It's like 80% of podcasts never make it past episode 10.
Yeah. Something like that.
So something like that. So once we hit episode 10, we were like, we did it.
Okay, we're in.
Yeah, that's right. You're beating the odds just by staying in it,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. That's so interesting. I love talking to people who do something similar because nobody does it the same way. So I like how you said that you had no idea what you were doing. We had no idea what we were doing. I was just telling her, I was like, I can't believe we're doing this thing.
Ever.
Yeah.
Yes, it's crazy.
This is probably, I don't know what episode we're on, but it's probably in the 40s, I would imagine. And, which is just insane that
that's great. Yeah. That's awesome.
If she had it her way, we would record every week like you do, or, thereabouts every week. We record 6 times a year. And so we'll do 9 podcasts in a weekend. And then
that's a lot.
It's insane.
It's exhausting.
It's insane.
Well, yeah.
Just a little sneak peek into behind the curtain.
And we, I don't know. Ours was really born out of the pandemic, right?
That was how we pivoted.
Right. So yours was intentional, well thought through, and ours was what do we want to do?
Yeah,
so,
that's fair.
Anyway.
Oh, wow.
Well, so in your podcast and just I guess in your recovery coach, I want to call it company, but service.
Yeah, my practice.
Yeah, your practice. That's a better word. Where do you find that you're using your talents and gifts, and what are they? And we love talking about this, that naming it is really important. A lot of people feel very shy about talking about their talents and gifts, but we just find that naming it really gives glory to the one who gave it to us. As long as we're giving credit where credit is due.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question because, I thought for years and years and years, my talent was music, and that was what I was good at and I could do. And I excelled at that ever since I was a kid. That's been my identity, And when I started writing books, I've had a couple of books published, and that was a shift because I was still doing music while I wrote the books. But the interesting thing is I began to realize that what I am is a communicator. Yes. I that comes out in music. It comes out in my songwriting, but it comes out in my other writing. It comes out in my speaking when I go out and speak to a different group about different things, usually recovery based. And then when I am working with people, I'm a communicator because the one thing we're trained in when we work with folks is it's really important how you say things. It's really important how you ask things. And your job isn't to tell people what to do. It's to make observations and to ask questions, and lead them to a conclusion that's their conclusion, not my conclusion about what I think they ought to do with their lives. Because we've all got opinions, every time we hear something. But I realized that I think what I am is a communicator, and I think I sort of have an empathic nature.
Yes.
I can feel things acutely that people have. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's not so good because, I absorb a lot of things that I probably should leave in the office and I end up taking them home or whatever. But I think my gifts are that I have a lot of empathy. I'm able to communicate things in a way that people can hear them, hopefully, without feeling threatened or shamed. And I can ask them hard questions without them feeling like I'm trying to, put them on the spot or make them feel ridiculous or stupid for the choices they've made in their lives or whatever that is. But I think that those are the things that have prevailed. And I think it manifested itself early in my life in music because I think all those things were true as I was, working in that capacity. But I think really I'm a communicator and I have a lot of empathy. I'm a 9 on the Enneagram if you do anything with Enneagrams.
Sure do.
And, so I'm terrible at conflict, but I'm really great at peacemaking. So,
yes.
It's that kind of thing. Yeah.
You have 2 3s present in front of you.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Like mother, like daughter. Yep.
I'm changing a little as I get older.
Yes, that's true. She's leaning towards a 2 now.
Yes.
As grandmahood may be approaching in the next few years, she's becoming a 2.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, so obviously the talents and gifts that God has given you, you have always used wisely. And it is a new season, I'm sure. And you've been doing this for a few years now. But talk to us about the work that you're doing as a recovery coach. How did you get started? And do you see clients every day, or how does that work?
Well, I do. I see probably about 5 to 7 people a day.
Wow.
And I have an office. I'm a part of a group in Brentwood, and we're in an office building and we share space. I have my own little office, and people come to me. I, through COVID, realized that I could do Zoom and FaceTime and that people would actually do that. And I ended up being able to, because of the podcast, I've ended up with people in other states as well,
Wow.
So
okay.
I'm able to talk to people who don't live in my community, but they heard about what I do and they wanted to test the waters, I guess, and see if it was a good fit. But the work as a recovery coach and what you're really doing is you're trying to help people establish new ways of being, thinking, and believing. And that's hard in a way because, we all come in steeped in our own ideology, and we all come in thinking we know what God thinks about everything if we're coming from faith systems like, ours.
Yeah.
And so my first AA sponsor told me, he said, Christians are going to be the hardest dang people in the world to get sober because they think they are so steeped in certainty that you can't tell them anything.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. And I'm finding that to be true.
That's
actually,
me.
you know,
Yeah.
and so I joke sometimes that part of my practice is just deprogramming evangelicals, you know, because it's not that I want them to change their beliefs, but I want them to take more responsibility for what they think and the choices they make, because the devil's an easy scapegoat, you know, to blame for things when in fact, you know, we're coming at this from our own crap and our own isolated ways of being and thinking over time that we've convinced ourselves of, and we need to be challenged of. So a lot of the work I do is that in this community. But I work also with treatment centers, and I work with referral people that are coming from nonprofits. I work with those folks a lot. There's a great organization in Nashville called Music Cares. That's sort of the arm of the Grammy Association. That's the nonprofit, and they cover care, the costs of care for some of their folks. And I'll get referral people from there. And but the work I do is largely one-on-one, and it's largely, you know, in the recovery coaching piece of it. And it's largely very focused, and people, you know, we want people to be able to commit to a long-term plan. Not, you know, I'm not going to help anybody in a session and a half, you know.
Right.
You come in here
totally.
and say, you got an hour, fix me. I mean, that's not my job, you know.
Right.
But I can sit and explore what might need to happen with you and see if you're willing to go on that journey with me. And if you are, then great. If you're not, then go back and do some more research and see how you do, you know.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you a question. Just from my recovery standpoint, I surround myself with team members. I've got an eating disorder specialized dietitian, an eating disorder specialized therapist, and health at every size doctor, things like that. Trying to surround myself with this support team. Are you part of the support? Are you the only support system for somebody, or are you part of a team? Do you work with other clinicians around a specific person?
Right. That's a great question, because many times what I believe about recovery is that it's a multi-pronged approach. I don't believe that, you know, any 12-step meeting is going to do it. I don't believe that any one therapist or counselor can do it. I think you need community. I think you need focused work. I think you need possibly some medical intervention if there's clinical depression or whatever. We always say that in any kind of addiction or compulsive behavior, there's usually shame, trauma, anxiety, and isolation. You know, isolation because it works best when you don't tell anybody what you're doing. Right. And, we're very shame-based because of it. And, the anxiety that drives it, where does that come from? And a lot of times it's trauma, big T or little t. And so we get, ideally somebody to see a trauma therapist. I work, part of our practice is associated with Tennessee neurofeedback. And, without getting into all the neurofeedback stuff, it's a very great therapy for people that experience trauma and have very highly what we call agitated, limbic systems, where they're on a high alert, hypervigilant all the time.
Right. And
neuro can kind of calm that down. And then we can really work with them a little better when the brain is a little less hyper aroused, Yeah. And it's a multi-pronged thing. And I want them to be in some kind of community. I don't care what the group is that you go to so much as I care that you have a group and that it's a steady group of people that you trust, that you can relate to and honestly share with, not the people you go and tell them what you want them to know.
Yeah, right. And you tell them what you want to hear, and you tell them just to tell it back to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
totally. Well,
go ahead. Let me jump in just real quick. It's interesting to hear your perspective on all of this. We had a guest fairly recently who is a Major League Baseball umpire, and you just don't think of these things, but they have trouble with these guys who finish the game at 9, 10 o'clock at night, and the only thing that's open in these towns are bars.
Right.
And so they were having to actually address alcoholism from you would think that they've got this great life and they're traveling and they're well paid and yet,
but they're away from their families half of the year.
Yeah. I mean, there's just all of this. I don't know if it's big T or little T trauma, but there's just trauma in their life. And then Sarah goes to church with a guy who has a ministry to truck drivers. Again, on the road all the time, miss their families, and oftentimes turn to something
kind of that isolation.
Yeah, a substance to help get through it. But anyway, it's you just don't think of it like you should. There's just a level of compassion that we need to have. But as you're talking, those are the two recent examples that I had thought of. Just kind of a collective group of people who might be prone to having to deal with that kind of stress in their life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think these high-profile people that we all look up to, and we see them doing what they do really well, whether it's athletes or I work with a lot of entertainment people.
Yeah.
Because of being in Nashville, and the idea that this is also idyllic and beautiful, and their life only really looks like that about 2 hours a day, and the rest of it is very lonely. I mean, I've met some of the most lonely people that have high profile lives, and very few people that they trust and very few people that they'll talk to. And in that isolation, it takes whatever shame and anxiety we already have and just exacerbates it, and the need to medicate it. And, there you go. So, it's huge, I'm sure, in the athletic world as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, you gave those examples, but we also had another recovery coach that we talked to back in season 1, Cindy Blum. I know that you guys are close, and I know that you guys are close, and that everybody's a friend, and we love her, and she was gracious enough to just in a very raw way tell us her story and how that's led her to where she is. And we talked about this new documentary, Shame on Us, that she was really excited to be a part of and that she was really excited to share about. And I'm super excited because you actually serve as executive producer on that.
I'm one of them. Yeah.
And so I would love to hear kind of that side of it. We've heard from her from like an interviewee side. But what has that process been like for you joining the project? And just tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, Skip Stokes, who is the filmmaker, and his company 1028 Films is here in Nashville, and they do a lot of independent kind of documentary type stuff. And he and I were having lunch one day, and he's a friend of mine, and he began to tell me some things that were happening in his life with some family members, and he had lost a family member to overdose, and how it was really jarring to him because the family didn't know whether or not they wanted to really tell people how the person died.
Yeah.
And this was a young man, and so you've got a family that loses somebody and in their 20s, and they weren't sick that anybody saw. They looked pretty healthy. They had just hiked the Appalachian Trail, all this stuff.
Wow.
And then they're gone,
Yeah.
And he was like, why can't we talk about what really happens to people in this culture, And so we started exploring that, and Skip is in recovery. He doesn't mind anyone sharing that. He's very open about that. And so we start talking about shame, and we start talking about stigma, and we start talking about the culture. And so he kind of came back to me with this idea that he had bounced with other people as well, about the idea that us as a culture, we as a culture are really stigmatizing addicts. And the problem that we have is not just an opioid issue or a lot of high alcoholism rates or whether or not to legalize weed,
Right.
The problem we have is that the people who suffer with abuse from all this are stigmatized, and it's it's talked about and treated in a way that perpetuates people not getting help or getting bad help, or families believing certain things about them. They're vilified and they're not understood about where the pain is coming from. And so he wanted to do this film because he said, I don't want it to be about recovery. I don't want it to be about addiction. I don't want it to be about the opioid crisis necessarily. I want it to be about the way our culture looks at people who struggle. And so we've just been able to get some really, really great interviews with people, professionals and people, who are newly sober or who've been sober for a long time. And just kind of put together this thing. He's still, working feverishly on it. And the other part of the executive producer part is not just helping the filmmaker find talent, or what we would call talent, but people, faces to share the stories, but also to raise money. Because there is no money.
There's no money. Oh, I know.
No one has any money to make any of these wonderful films that are, burning passions in the filmmakers' lives. And so we have to go out and we have to fundraise and we have to do, things that knock on doors and ask people for, ridiculous sums of money and all of that. So part of my job is being creative with that, which is a real challenge because I'm not a great asker. And so there's some irony there that I'm in that role, but you're a great
really communicator. You're a great communicator, and you're good at asking questions. Just kidding.
Well, thank you. But yeah, it's a new role for me because I don't know anything about filmmaking. I'm just there to kind of help fill some really good space with stories that are really important. So.
Yes. Well, and since we have spoken with Cindy, you guys, I think, came out with a new trailer. And so if it's all right with you, I think we're going to go ahead and share that now.
Great.
I think a belief not just in the family, but in general, that this is a self-will issue. And that if they really care about me, that this person is choosing their substance over the love of their family member, which I appreciate why it looks that way. A little too simple.
What would you do to get the thing that you think you have to have or you die? And the answer to that's anything. If my craving for this thing is 10 times stronger than your cravings are for food and water, what would I do to get it? And people always say, well, they just need to put it down. I say, oh, fair enough. I got you. I want you to stop eating. Okay. And I'm not talking about for today.
I mean, it's a setup. It's set up. And so not only are we stigmatized by society, we're set up by society not to recover because they believe that we're going to stay in the vicious cycle, that we're going through the revolving doors, and that's all we know.
I could have died. I really could have died. And so I asked if they would help me get into treatment and help me start to figure out how to live differently because I knew that was going to be a repeat cycle. I've already seen it.
I didn't call my mom. I didn't call a friend. I didn't call anybody to say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. What should we do? What are the resources? Which I would have done in any other situation with the health and well-being of my child.
It's trauma, shame, anxiety, and isolation. And most people who are dealing with an unwanted behavior, a compulsive behavior, an addiction, a compulsive self-soothing pain remedy that isn't working anymore, whatever we want to call it, they're experiencing some combination of those four things.
In the moments where the mental illness was calmed down and where he was finding moments of sobriety, and there were many where he would white knuckle it and he would do well, and then there would be mental health events that would turn him and he would relapse again.
I'm still here, and it sucks to look back and know that, a handful of those people that are just like me aren't here.
The shame is the gift that keeps on giving. That's the family. The family carries it. The person with the substance use disorder carries it. Everybody carries it.
Oh my gosh, we are just so excited for you and for the team, for 1028 Films and for Cindy that you guys are doing this. This is it's just so important even if you don't have substance abuse or anybody you know has substance abuse, just having this awareness and having this film is just going to be so important. And so we're really, really excited for what you guys are doing. With that.
Thank you. We're excited about it. We want to just help have we know this film isn't going to change the world, but we do want to change maybe the opportunity to have a conversation. That's what we want. So
I think it will do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your books. I know you have 2, right?
I do. I have a book I wrote several years ago now, but it was called Our Authentic Selves, Reflections on What We Believe and What We Wish We Believed. And it's like 40 short entries. There's some questions at the end of each. It's sort of a reflections journal. I wrote it from a faith perspective because I think a lot of us live on what we wish we believed and not what we really believe. And we're afraid to ask ourselves those questions. So I wrote that book, and I was excited to get to have that published by Lighthouse Publishing. And then there's my most recent book. It's called After the Miracle, Illusions on the Path to Restoration. And it is really about the disruption of sobriety, because that's the part we forget to tell people about.
Yeah.
When we take away somebody's anesthesia, families go in and they want everybody to get well. They want everybody to, get well and behave and come back and play with the rest of us. And that's not how it works. It's a very disruptive thing to take away somebody's coping mechanism when it's a substance or a behavior, and then say, now you're going to go through life without the bubble wrap, around you.
Yes.
And you're going to acutely feel and you're going to acutely experience life the way it's meant to be, except that you don't really have any coping skills.
Right.
And so after the miracle, I sort of took some biblical parallels with it. And, I just started with Jesus asking the man on the mat, do you want to be well? Which is sort of a weird question if he's been paralyzed for 38 years or whatever it is.
Right.
And, it's kind of like, wow, that's kind of a brazen thing to just ask somebody right there before you perform a miracle. But the question is, do we want to be well? Because well isn't going to mean you don't do certain behaviors anymore. Well is going to mean you approach life completely differently. You're going to have responsibilities you haven't had. You're going to have tasks that are going to be entrusted to you that you never were. When a guy's a beggar at the gate, life looks really one way. And when you suddenly, the whole town saw you get up and take up your bed and walk, and, you have to go get a job and support yourself, and the people who have taken care of you no longer have a role, and their identity is pulled out from under them in some ways.
Wow.
It's all that stuff, and then you realize some people in your life needed you to be sick because they liked being in charge,
Right.
And so it's just, it's a complicated thing to get sober. So after the miracle is, really more about the disruption of sobriety than it is about, addiction.
Yeah, right.
So, and that's a Morgan James publishing thing. And all those are available on Amazon and, anywhere you can buy a book, I guess.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you think there's another book in your future?
I think there is. Okay. I am, I'll preview this idea with you. I haven't really told anybody about this. I'm thinking about a book right now. I'm making some notes and I'll see where it goes. But if I do it, I would really love to do it. But it's called, the working idea is the integrated life. Because I think that a lot of us have experienced life in very compartmentalized ways. And, this is this version of me, this is that version of me, this functions well over here, but not over here. And we learn to do that. And especially those of us that have gone through, an addiction and recovery and all of that. And I think one of the things I'm realizing working with people is what I'm helping them do is integrate. Jung talked about it in, the psychology world and all of that, but it's about integrating.
All right. Yeah.
And so the integrated life is what I hope to write maybe in the next year or two, I hope. So.
That's awesome. We support that.
Yeah,
that's
that would be
very
great.
cool.
We'll have you back when you release it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
Well, because I think even what you were talking about with people who are kind of in the spotlight, so to speak, the way that when you have that that's a compartment that you are on, right?
Yeah.
And then when the lights are off, you not to become a different person, but you you're able to maybe take a deep breath, and then kind of your real personality comes out, or I don't know what, but you just think about that sometimes with, I do it.
I do it.
Yeah.
He was talking about compartmentalizing life. I'm like, yep.
Yeah. I think we all, have learned in some capacity that there's a persona in our lives that we can live from, and that is acceptable and gets love and gets our needs met, but it may not be the truest place for us in many ways. This is the person I have to be. I worked with one artist who said, I can't make that appointment on Friday because I have to leave to go be, and then he used his name that weekend as if it was a third person.
Oh, wow.
I have to go be him that
job.
weekend. And it was just interesting because I thought, that's a really interesting way to think about that.
It is an interesting way.
Not an integrated way to be, maybe. But
totally. Well, that'll be great. I mean, what an important work. So,
very cool.
Keep us posted.
Yeah, I will. I'll hopefully have something to show you sometime.
Yes.
That would be great.
Well, so tell us where people can connect with you. How can they get in touch with you if they feel inspired to, or you said we already told us about the books and we've linked all that, but how can people connect with you?
They can go to my website, which is David Hampton CPRC, which stands for Certified Professional Recovery Coach. So davidhamptoncprc.com. And my bio is there, what I do, descriptions are there. There's a place to connect with me, to email me. There's a place to find my books or to hear more about what's going on and the podcast and things. And so that would be a great place. So
perfect. Awesome. Fantastic. Well, I got to tell you, this has been so encouraging and life-giving to me.
Yeah.
Particularly as I am going through a behavioral recovery. But I'm so grateful for your time and for you sharing your gifts with others, and then also with us and our listeners. And so we're just so grateful.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for being vulnerable enough to share your part of your, what you're experiencing right now.
Well, I
think that people just need to be able to say that very matter-of-factly. And I think that's part of the stigma thing. If people just said matter-of-factly, this is what I'm dealing with right now. I mean, if I had to go to a kidney doctor tomorrow for something, God forbid, that, I wouldn't have any problem telling people that.
Right.
I got to go see a kidney specialist about whatever. But man, we get into our behavior and we think that suddenly the walls go up. So
totally.
Kudos to you for that. So
well, thank you. I and for our listeners, who are out there who maybe need help with substance abuse or a behavioral issue, or if they know somebody, we just want you to know, as believers, we love Jesus. Amen. And Jesus is always enough, but also there is a space for mental health, and there's a space for science in that, and medication, and getting help from professionals. And so we are big advocates of that. And so we encourage those who maybe need it to seek help. And so we'll put some resources for you down in the description and on the screen. Yeah. But we just want to make sure that everybody knows that you are loved, no matter what you're going through. We love you. Jesus loves you. And there's absolutely a time, and maybe now is the time for you to get some help. And so I just wanted to, I don't know.
Amen.
Mention that just in case. I don't know.
That's great.
You just never know who's listening. So, well, David, thank you so much again. We love you. We're praying for you. This was awesome. And we're so, again, grateful for your time.
It was wonderful to see your face.
Love you guys too. And thank you so much. It was really fun, and all the best on your podcast.
Thank you. Same to you.
You're doing there. I mean, that's going to be great. So hope everything keeps plugging along for you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. We'll see you.
All right. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
For more information on Project Brickworks, visit us online at projectbrickworks.org. Subscribe to our newsletter or text BRICK to 55498 to get the latest news and updates. And to catch up on previous episodes, head over to thecollaborationconversation.org. We love you all. Be blessed, and we'll see you next time. Bye.